We discuss this now with the director and executive producer, Murena Emmanuel, Netshitangani, and co-writer Mpho Modisakeng. Welcome, good morning to the both of you, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so firstly, let me start with you, Mr. Director. I just need to know, what inspired this film?
The film is based on true events. I'm one of the victims, I must say, of Lubunyu. So it happened that when I was growing up, he came to our house and I was awake and I was busy pestering my sister to accompany me to the kitchen, you know, to fetch water. And to cut the long story short, when we arrived at the kitchen, there he was.
Wait, this is a real life story?
Yeah.
Your story?
My story.
So, okay, let's break this down a little bit. Tell me about this sort of demonic, can I say, demonic character. Explain to the viewer like you're explaining to a 5-year-old.
It's a creature that, okay, the memory that I have, that I was like, I had an encounter with him, you know, he was dark and he had like long hair and he had some shiny stuff on him so that when you try to grab him, he easily slips out. And he was scary, you know, he was super naked.
How old were you?
I think I was 8 years old, 7, 8 years old.
And how tall was this creature?
Very tall, because I was young. From my point of view, was very tall.
What is the name of the creature?
Lubunyu.
Lubunyu.
Yes.
That's the name of the film.
That's the name of the film.
So that was your personal encounter with, how would you describe, I say demonic, but how would you describe it? What is this thing?
I would say it's demonic, you know, because when I was writing, I sort of like had an idea of saying, you know, that person, like they don't sort of like switch themselves into that, but there's sort of like a spirit, you know, that, you know, embodies them, and then they start to react like that.
And what did you learn about this Lubunyu in the course of your life? When you know, your young 8-year-old mind probably couldn't process what was happening, but what do you know? What do you know now?
When I reflected back, I was like, okay, we still have like, you know, the same problem, you know, within our country of, you know, gender-based violence. And I was like, since I've got this trauma in me, the best way of, you know, dealing with this trauma is to tell a story, since I'm a storyteller. So for me, I'm not focusing at Ha-Khakha only, but it's a universal thing to say there is a problem that is still existing. We are trying to solve the problem, but the problem is unsolved, you know, of gender-based violence.
All right. And I'm going to bring you in here, Mpho. What was your experience of co-writing this film, and in what ways did you incorporate the themes of gender-based violence into the story?
My experience coming into the story, because I've worked with Murena for about, I think, almost 7 to 8 years now. So basically, my sort of role in the story was to add the nuances of the story, like things like how do we make this best appealing globally to the international market. So that's when we incorporated things like gender-based violence. But I came from a perspective of saying, well, there's like these buzzwords on the internet, like toxic masculinity and all that. So how do we best engage with subjects like that? So that's when we decided to sit down and start to conceptualize and write the story.
And what was your role in bringing the story of the Venda culture together in a way that brings integrity and respect to the Vavenda people?
Of course, of course. That was a tough one, I'd say. Very tough. Because I remember I was introduced by him to the Venda culture, the Venda people. So welcoming, by the way. So basically, we went to Venda for about 5 to 4 months for our research when we started writing the story. So we walked the grounds of Ha-Khakha, met the people, met the king, and then we started to write the story. So it was a very intense sort of 5 months of research that went in.
I can imagine. And let's talk a bit more about that research process, because very little is understood globally about spiritual matters. And I love your honesty in telling your story. How many other people did you encounter that had the same encounter that you had?
Oof, so many. It's unfortunate that I can't, you know, mention their names.
Sure.
Right now. Yeah. It was very, you know, a very painful, you know, process, when we were busy interviewing them, and it was just heavy on them. There were so many people. Even after we shot Lubunyu, when I went back home just to reflect, also just to be with my villagers, some people came out more to say this and that happened. And they were like, are you going to go for a part 2? Then I'm like, well, if there is a chance, yes, I might go. Then they're like, okay, we're ready to give you the story. You see, so yeah.
So these are based on real life events.
Yeah.
Now, in the making of the story, how were you able to source your cast members? Because obviously it's a TshiVenda film, and the cast has to be able to speak very fluent TshiVenda.
Yeah. So this is what happens when we're writing. I pick my cast members while I'm writing, like main cast. Then I will discuss them with him. But he said, I think this person literally fits this role. I remember when we started with McDonald, though, I was like, I've worked with him somewhere else, and I know he can adapt to this character, so this is for him specifically. And also Chamone Sibe, I was like, okay, this kind of a character, I think Sibe can portray it. So we, in as much as it's a Venda film, we try to sort of like incorporate Zulu and Sotho. Because even if you were to go to Venda right now, you'll find that somebody married a Zulu wife or a Sotho, you understand? Or there's a Sotho policeman there. So that's what we try to, to bring together.
Mpho, can you share some of your most memorable moments throughout this entire process, and what challenges you may have faced in putting this film together?
Funny enough, when he mentioned the writing process and how we sort of incorporated some of the actors and how we got the cast, I remember one of the actors, Bochirangwan, the guy who's playing the short character in the story. I met him in a mall, just a random interaction with this guy who was interesting, and then that's how he eventually got to be part of the story, just like that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, just a random encounter.
And which scenes stand out for you the most in the making of Lubunyu?
Sorry to say this, but it's the rape scenes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I sort of like invested more time on them to say, how do I best portray these scenes in a manner whereby I also, I don't sort of like undress the dignity of women in particular, but they have to be sort of like,
we have to see it.
Yeah.
We have to see it, and we have to know what happens, and it needs to be brought to our faces so that we can face the reality of what's happening.
Exactly.
This is incredible. How did you feel when you discovered that you won at Cannes?
We were at the house. We had a friend, Mangu. Mangu had came to visit us, and Mangu was like, let me see your film. Funny enough, we were watching Lubunyu when we discovered, Yeah. So now I was like, because Mangu was going to give me some sort of like, criticism. I was like, hey, I'm just waiting to be boxed here. So an email came through, and I think I was drinking water at the time.
Minding your business.
Yeah, minding my own business. Then I just stood up and I started dancing, like I did the Zulu thing, Venda thing, all combined together. My wife, she's Zulu, so yeah. So now everybody was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, we won, you understand?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a very nice moment.
All right. Mpho, what do you hope people will take away from the film, and where can it be accessed?
Well, currently we're still in communication with the distributor, and our distribution manager will be in contact with those details. But what I hope people will take away from this film, it's just in general, the whole essence of the story was to sort of like bring awareness to issues of gender-based violence, and also issues of generational conflict, like between the young and the old, and how that sort of influences conversations around masculinity in general.
Well, I certainly wish you both all the best. Thank you for this film.
Thank you.
And I know that distributors out there better be paying attention. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that was director and executive producer Murena, Emmanuel, Netshitangani, and co-writer of the film, Mpho Modisakeng.